Okay.
Yeah, but is that the 1 minute thumbs up or the?
Now let's do your live.
Already behind you. Okay, we are live at our.
I'm having trouble with that.
Well, don't worry.
Okay,
I'm working on
Okay.
you keep rolling.
it, but the first thing is roll call.
Do you need that for roll call?
No.
Okay, let's do roll call.
Mayor Godis,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hershey,
Present.
Counselor, Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
You need the board here.
Flustered. Counselor Hershey,
Present.
Counselor Kaup.
Here.
Counselor Dem,
Here.
Counselor Step,
Yes.
Counselor Wuso.
Present.
We have a wonderful quorum.
Are there any agenda changes or conflicts this evening? Okay, seeing none, citizens appearing before council, these are for items not appearing on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda, other than budget, which we've already taken public comment on, it had the public portion of the budget, anything else on the agenda, you can give comment at that time. So
Don't we get to say the pledge of allegiance?
We haven't gotten there.
it's,
Okay, it's not that thing before. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Lori Chase at 705 Cowden Drive here in Glenwood Springs. I am the neighbors of the people. I gave you a packet of pictures. And I'm here to protect wildlife and my driveway and get rid of the garbage that these people have continued to dump. Sorry about that. Continue to dump for the past, since the beginning of September. Beginning of September, integrated property management team replaced a larger dumpster with a smaller one pictured in your little packet. That smaller dumpster has a kind of a rubberized or plastic lid, and the bears just sit on top and grab whatever they can. Or people overstuff the garbage can and the bear bar does not get put back up. And then they spread the garbage everywhere. One morning I came out and there was lots of trash, including a fork and a bunch of broken glass in my driveway. This ordinance that protects the animals is Title 100 of the Public Health Municipal Code. And it states your garbage must be secured or else you will get fined for every offense. I sure would like to see that happen a little bit more often with these people because they have not complied. They comply for a day or two, but as soon as there's too much trash, it starts all over again. And I'm handicapped. I can't bend down and pick up their trash on my yard, nor should I have to. The bears shouldn't have to be endangered because of the negligence and inconsideration of the owners and the property management team integrated. They are not doing a good job. And as a side note, could you guys please enforce the handicap parking a little bit more efficiently? Because I'm handicapped and I can't tell you how many times I see people parked in those spaces. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori.
Lori, what handicap spaces are you referring to? Just,
Do you mean it like at the mall, at the supermarket, or in public streets?
Public streets, in front of Bullock's, in front of, what's the name of that restaurant? Pullman. Delivery trucks parked there. It's like, oh, thank you very much. And today I had a semi altercation with this woman. She was waiting for her mom inside of Bullock's.
I like how people say I'm not parked, I'm just waiting.
Waiting.
Sorry.
Hence the reason why she
I
was.
like
still
how
in the
people
car.
say I'm not parked, I'm just waiting.
Exactly, exactly. So
Sorry.
it makes it more difficult for those of us that can't walk very far for various reasons. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Lori.
do you want Chief Harris, what, to the question of enforcement, what can we do? I mean, do we issue tickets, or are we just so stretched that's tough to identify those problems?
No, thank you for asking. We have a pretty robust bear violation enforcement program. We were just awarded a grant actually from the state to work with CPW about bear enforcement because we're one of the highest consumers in the valley, regardless of one of the most proactive rather agencies in the valley that deal with bear enforcement. The problem is, like we just spoke about a little bit earlier, is with one community response officer who typically deals with that, they don't work 7 days a week. She works, 4 or 5 days a week. So they're spread a little bit thin with the call demand that we have in the community. So we try to respond to those as often as possible, or we kind of defer to CPW as well. They work with us. They've been great partners. So we do encourage people to get those bear cans, and through this grant, we expect that that's going to enhance that program. And we're going to be working with Matt Langhorst and his team moving forward with some of the trash management programs so that some of these bear proof cans might be part of that program as well to kind of eliminate some of the concerns that she's talking about.
Chief, is there a way, I don't know, it's just if somebody like Lori or somebody else sees, is there a way they could, without going through a big rigmarole, they could call and say, hey, we have a trash issue, and then focus our code enforcement people to run by those places?
We can, and we receive those calls frequently,
Okay.
but as you know, we try to prioritize without getting into long dissertation, how we prioritize those calls for service. So there are maybe occasions where they don't get to it, but typically we try to address all those calls.
Okay, and I know staffing's an issue, but I
Yes,
just.
sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
Chief, can we reach out to like a property management owner person and say, we're having a problem? I mean, it seems to be not just an individual home, but it seems to be a problem with the,
Right, and some of these HOAs and those kind of things. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And if she'd like to, call me or come down to the office, we can talk about specific neighbors that we can flag or who that property management company might be. A lot of times we may not even know who's running that property,
okay.
but we're
thank
happy to do that for sure.
And Chief, my understanding is that we do have graduated fines that increase quite significantly.
They do. And if a
Have-
person,
Are we implementing those on repeat offenders?
that's a question for the city prosecutor,
Okay.
Mr. Collins. I don't know. We don't get involved in that piece of it, but I can tell you that when we issue these citations, the court, Judge Mauer is willing to dismiss those first citations if someone comes in and shows proof that they bought or have a bear proof can.
Okay,
And then following that, subsequent violations are, they do graduate each time fairly significantly.
okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
May I have one more comment?
Sorry. Laura, if you want to, send us an email. But
Why don't you stay in touch with the chief?
yeah, we just don't want to get into a back and forth.
Yeah, I told you.
Just- Okay, next on the agenda, is there anybody else, any other citizens? Nope, okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
So
agenda?
moved.
Second. Been moved by Charlie, second by Marco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi,
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
you're gonna have more surprise.
I'm like excited. I gotta watch the board. All right. Item number 10, presentation of 2021 financial.
The auditor's here.
It's lovely to see excitement about an audit.
That's right. It's when the room is full, you have to be concerned. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Paul Bacchus. I'm a CPA. I'm with a firm called McMahon Associates. We audit pretty much all of CAST and honestly, pretty much all the governments in the Central Rockies. That's kind of all we do is financial statement audits. Every year, municipal governments have, at least over a certain size, have to have a financial statement audit. Basically, that occurs in 2 stages. We come out early in the year and we meet with each of your departments and go through the internal controls and try and understand how does money come in, how does money go out, things like that. And then the second part is going through the financial records and kind of verifying numbers. Glenwood Springs, like pretty much every entity, is struggling with, turnover and trying to kind of keep up with the workflow. We did complete the audit by September 30th, which is when it's due to the Colorado State Auditor. We submitted that document. It probably should be in your packet. Well, it should be in your packet. I haven't verified that. And that process is all good. Glenwood actually does an additional financial reporting thing called an ACFR, gets submitted to an organization called GFOA. It's kind of a higher level reporting than a lot of municipal governments do. And you did receive that award last year. And then we also have some recommendations that we provide, and we're working with your management team and the finance team to get those cleared up for next year. So I'm happy to go into a lot of detail. I'm happy to not go into detail. You guys kind of tell me what you want, or I can try and answer any questions you have. I know you hear from me regularly. We bring 4 CPAs out, but we always have one consistent person on the engagement. We always have at least one new CPA on the engagement, and then the other ones kind of fall based on the scheduling. So,
Steve, are there any questions you'd like us to ask?
Can I ask a question if,
Ask him to summarize in great detail all of the process and procedures they go through and list off the documents that got uploaded to the system.
so seeing no more questions.
I think you actually have.
Go ahead, Charlie.
First of all, I don't think I've seen auditors without their tie on, so I just want to commend you for not wearing your
I
tie.
live in Edwards.
But seriously, I read through this, and I thought, I love the report, the structure. I've seen a lot of audits. I want to thank you for your work, and I want to thank Yvette and Steve for working. I know you've done a lot of work and their staff with you, but I appreciate the conciseness of it and appreciate, of course, the great report we got. So
Thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, we actually have a portal, almost kind of like a banking portal, where clients upload the requested items, and it sends an annoying email if we don't get the stuff by a certain date. But in your financial statements, which I just looked here, or your binder, your team uploaded 663 documents that we looked at and kind of verified. So it's a big process. But Glenwood is, I think, struggling with the internal controls and turnover, but that is honestly true for virtually every organization we look at. You come back and it's like, I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know you. So, but you do have a good finance team, and they work hard to get everything implemented and completed. So, and I told Yvette I don't say anything nice because I'm an auditor. So,
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we approve the 2021 financial audit.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Ryan, let's call the question.
Green across the board.
thank you. I appreciate your trust. And if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I was in the neighborhood.
Because I'm used to seeing you on Zoom.
Yeah,
On
I was
Zoom.
working on a Red Bull today, and I'm like, I like seeing people in person.
Well, thank you for coming.
All right, item number 11, this is resolution 2022-38. This is the adoption of the 2023 budget.
Good evening, council. I'm Steve Boyd. We submitted the budget officially in October, the first meeting, and then you guys heard from the public 2 weeks ago tonight. So what we need tonight is a motion to approve, a second, and at least 4 of you to say yes.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the 2022-38 2023 budget.
It's been moved by Council Russo, seconded by Councilor Cobb. Yes.
Just to be
Tony.
clear, so people know, we did have a public comment period last time.
Yes.
We did.
Where we did open it, public hearing, excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Ryan, let's call the question. Merry Christmas, Steve.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Steve. I wrote for all your hard work.
Thank you.
For the
Matt.
record, it's green.
Meaning that it passed unanimously.
It passed unanimously. Good budget, Steve.
All right. Item number 12, ordinance 2022-24, extending the extended Downtown Development Authority tax increment financing.
Right, bear with me just one moment. Now I may just need support with screen sharing. Let's see here.
Why is everything dark out there?
Good.
It's nighttime.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There we go.
Your magic IT.
Okay. We're good?
Mhm.
Okay. Hi, Council. I'm Jillian Sutherland, the Executive Director of the Downtown Development Authority. And I'm here per the board's request to council for extending the tax increment financing that funds the Downtown Development Authority. Just for some quick background, if I can get this to advance. Tax increment financing, or as we say, TIF, was established originally in 2002 to fund the Downtown Development Authority. It was originally set in place for a 25-year period. And so it is set to expire in 2027 as it stands. Per state ordinance, you are able to extend tax increment financing for a period of 20 years by a majority vote of council. And you can do that anytime within the final 10 years of the original lifespan of tax increment financing. And so the board wanted us to bring this forward to you all because as we've seen, you know, in the past 20 years, the DDA has made significant improvements to our downtown, from the public-private partnership that kept our library and the CMC offices downtown, to the Cooper parking garage, to the award-winning Bethel Plaza and 7th Street Festival space. We've made amazing strides, and we really got to see the fruits of that labor with the unprecedented challenges that our community faced the past 3 years with the pandemic and mudslides and wildfires. In 2021, the downtown saw record sales tax revenues. And I think that's a true testament to the forward-thinking investments that the DDA has been able to accomplish in our downtown in partnership with the city, of course. But our work is not done downtown. We've really only scratched the surface for the improvements and just the potential that our downtown truly has. And we have some really great plans that have been adopted in recent years, guiding that vision forward. And what we really need are lasting implementation resources. And that's exactly what tax increment financing does for our downtown. And, you know, there are some really important plans from the 2020 Plan of Development that council just very recently adopted that really guides the priorities of the DDA, the 2019 area-wide plan that really charts a path forward for the Confluence area or 8th Street crossing, the 2017 6th Street Master Plan that is a 4-phase plan. We're implementing the first phase next year, which is really exciting. So we have this really great roadmap for our downtown. But as it stands, the Downtown Development Authority can only make a strategic plan for the next 5 years because the TIF is set to expire in 2027. So if we want to renew this now, we're able to be more forward-thinking, make more significant financial investments to really make sure that we are carrying all of those priorities forward that are outlined in those plans. So that is what we have before you all today, and I'm happy to answer any questions or.
So this is a ordinance, so we will take public comment. So let's keep it to questions and then we'll do comments or a motion afterwards. Paula and then Charlie.
My only question was on the fiscal impact, and it talks about, and maybe this is my lack of understanding of how the TIF works, but when you spell out that in 2019, we had 116K and then 98K and 54K, I got all that. It was going down. We had COVID. We had all those incidents. We go up to 75K and then we're projected to go down to 65K again. Can you explain why the drop is projected?
So
for
that's specific to
2020?
property tax revenue. Steve, can you speak to that?
Well, yeah. There are two parts to the TIF. One is a sales tax and the other is a property tax. So each year when we get the property tax statements and stuff, we can go through and we basically have a 2-year cycle. So there's going to be some variance one way and the other. And of course, COVID messed things up a lot, as you can see. But there's kind of a big swing because the first half of the property tax collected comes off the top before they get to start sharing in that revenue.
And the property taxes haven't decreased, right?
I would have to go back and look at the actual statements, but they haven't decreased substantially. They go up and down. They may have gone down a little bit last year.
Commercial.
Right.
Residential.
Okay, that, I guess that's where I'm understanding this. Thank you.
Charlie?
Jillian, will the extension allow the DDA, if they choose to do so, to maybe get into long-term financing to help enhance some of the development of these projects?
Yeah, sure. Yes. And as it stands, we really can't do that. We can only work with our annual budget because we only have a 5-year lifespan right now.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Shelley, and then Ingrid.
I have a question. This might be for you, Carl. Do we run into any legal implications with an extension as we did with the original TIF, or has that all been answered?
Well, from my perspective, it's been answered. There were some changes made to the kind of how, with this rolling 10-year resetting the base was kind of an accommodation to other property tax, entities. And then in the final 10 years, the share back to the underlying taxing entities as well. I don't really think at this point, I mean, when we ran into those in the early 2000s, when we did that case, TIF financing was being fought over a lot more than it is today. And I think it's much better understood. And, you can look at the enhancements in downtown and see how property values have raised. And that's always the argument with TIF financing, right? Is that we're raising everybody's, boat on the river. And so taking that little bit off the top to make that happen ultimately helps everybody. And so there's a greater revenue stream to underlying taxing jurisdictions than if you hadn't been doing that in the first place, as long as you're implementing well, like we have here.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm going to ask you a question, but you don't actually have to answer it this evening. And that is that, with the renewal, it's always a good opportunity to reflect and just asking you if you feel like our current DDA is representative of all the players who need to be there. Are there any missing members? And say, is this a good time to reflect on that in addition to potentially extending this TIF?
Well, I will say we have a board vacancy currently.
Okay.
So that is something good for the public to know.
Mhm.
And there is an opportunity to bring a new voice on board.
Okay, thank you.
So in 2047 is our ability to extend it ends. By statute, does the TIF just end, or are we able to at least take it out to a vote to see if the residents want to extend it? How does that work?
I believe it's a hard end
Okay.
on the cycle, which would have been 40 years from inception.
Theoretically, legislature could change that. though.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I will say that this is a tool that is kind of in the middle of its lifespan, if you will, kind of statewide in terms of how it's being used. And so it's hard to say what the next 20 years of legislation will bring.
Just more curious.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I do know that some of the older DDAs in the state, like Grand Junction and Fort Collins, are currently looking at options for what they do at the end of their lifespan, because they are a little bit ahead of us by about 20 years. So things may change.
Yeah. All right, this is a ordinance, so we'll open up for public comment. All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion. Charlie.
Yeah, first of all, I want to comment. I think the DDA is doing a great job. I've been involved with it off and on. It's fairly significant since 2008. I think it's a great program, and I think extending it's great. So I move for the approval of ordinance 2022-24 to extend the Downtown Development Authority tax increment financing.
It's moved by Charlie, seconded by Marco. Brian, let's call the question.
Could I make a comment?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
I didn't have any questions. I think that, Mr. Mayor, you're aware, and I think you have been in this boat too, where we've been critical of some of the things that the Downtown Development Authority in the past has done. And I think that often people in this community have felt like that the downtown got a lot more focus, particularly on 7th Street and that project than other areas of the community. I think, and the reason I voted for the budget is a lot of those things, and Steve will tell you, have been corrected, particularly with regards to spending on infrastructure and streets and other places. We have to keep in mind that this is a very pretty part of the community. I work down here. I love it here. I eat lunch here almost every day, but this is just a little small portion of the entire city. And a lot of people, Ingrid and Marco and Paula represent, and Charlie too, a little bit, represent other parts of the community that are important too. So I hope we just all keep that in mind, but I can support this tax at this time. Thank you.
You know, and I'll say real quick that I think that the leadership of the DDA under Jillian and Christian has gone a long, long way. I think the conversations we now have about, hey, this benefits the downtown and that also benefits the community as well. So how do we split this cost? What is fair? What is equitable? I think those conversations are happening in such a positive, good faith way now that might not have been the same in the past. So I will support this motion as well.
Call for the question?
Yeah.
It's unanimous.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, may I have one final comment?
Unanimous, yeah.
Unanimous, yes.
It's very clear.
My final comment is I'll be back in 2047 promoting a DDA. I'll be 97, but I'll be here doing this.
You are very optimistic, my friend.
I will not be.
All right. Item number 13, single material landfill bans discussion.
Dan, we're gonna put Dan in the land,
No,
land Zeppelin.
bags. I think of them in bags.
Oh, you
Bag
said
ban.
Dan.
Bag.
Iron butter. No, is it Dan?
Yeah.
Dan. Dan.
Jen's having trouble with this. because he has no
My
idea.
enunciation, yeah,
I know the beard is.
it's throwing off my speech. It's kind of like when you get braces in your tongue, like, or when you get Novocaine.
Down you go.
Breakfast. It's always called it breakfast.
Was that just for a holiday in my daughter's? It's really, yeah, it's not pretty. Well, you can thank Steve.
Okay.
Boyd.
All right, it's up there. Sweet.
All right.
All right, we have a 47-minute presentation for you.
And by 47, you mean 4.7.
I've got 7 slides, and one of them is saying is your question. So we started this conversation just as a brief chat last work session of, hey, we're looking at potentially looking at some of these single material landfill bans. Fort Collins does them. It's basically items that could be brought to the landfill that we know can be recycled, composted, and they're kind of be brought in an inefficient and unenvironmentally friendly way. So instead of actually asking you to do something, because it was kind of abrupt, what Liz suggested was, hey, let me go over this with them, kind of chat what those bans look like, what they could be, what they could entail. And then we could just kind of have an open discussion. We don't have to do it immediately, but it's definitely something we want to put in front of you and start chatting about. So, Liz.
Like that. Okay, I will be pretty quick, but I'm really happy that you all have been discussing this already and we have some momentum on landfill bans. So we can just kind of discuss today what they are, why we could have them, and what materials we might want to look at and in what order. So essentially, a landfill ban is just a tool. Any municipality at any level or a state can use it, or a landfill owner can use a landfill ban to increase recycling of a certain material. Once a landfill ban, it sounds extreme when you start out with it. Once it's been in effect for a few years, it's one of those things you get used to and it doesn't even seem like a ban anymore. So
the best example we have in Colorado is e-waste. We all know e-waste doesn't go in the trash. The reason it doesn't go in the trash, and we're all used to it that at this point, is that in 2013, the state decided to put a landfill ban on electronic waste. So it's one of those things that we sort of prioritize materials, and as the owner of the landfill, we can do that. So I think we should look strategically at what materials we would want to do a landfill ban on. So this chart right here is taken directly from the 2018 waste sort data. So this shows the percentages on here mean that for example, 16% of the waste going into the landfill at that time was food waste. So if we look at the top, sort of some of the top choices, I guess, for landfill bans that we could look at would be yard waste, metal, cardboard, and food waste. So this slide just shows you what percent of the waste going into the landfill right now is that material. So that's that amount of that material, for example, 3,350 tons each year of yard waste is being put into the landfill and just being wasted as opposed to being composted. So we've got the breakdown for each one right here. And the reason I pulled out these four is because they are some of the more common materials being landfilled that could be recycled. And they're also common materials that other cities, states, and landfills already have bans on. So it's something that we know can be done and we can replicate it. So we can absolutely discuss this a lot more, but if anyone was asking for what I would recommend starting with right away is yard waste. And the reason for that is that the capacity is immediately available to handle that. And it wouldn't require a lot of extra outreach or education for us to do that because everything's already in place. I think metal and cardboard also could be done very soon. We just need a little bit of outreach and education on those. Food waste, as I'm sure you all have thought about, would take a little more doing. Just because it is one of those really big inputs into the landfill, and composting at the curbside level is pretty much still in its beginning phases in our community. It's still not super common, right? So that would take a little more work. And the things we want to consider when we're thinking about any material ban are just, what is the infrastructure like? Does it exist? What do we have to make exist if it doesn't exist already? And then how is the end market? So what would you all like to discuss about that, if anything?
Paula and Charlie.
So I'm gonna go to yard waste.
Yeah.
So previously we did the big spring cleanup and we've been working towards solutions on how to take care of that. And then we've also had the discussion with the single hauler. And I have been in communities where there are 3 trash cans out for your trash pickup, and one of them is yard waste. And so one of my questions is, can we look at that when we're looking at a single hauler? Or can we look at a suggestion Matt made in one of those previous meetings where that single hauler at least does that from May to September or something like that? Because again, looking at people's capabilities of getting out to the places they need to go to dispose of that yard waste. I mean, how do you perceive us, because that's the easiest low hanging fruit, how do you perceive us finding a way to help the community do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Paula. So since we are still in that process of refining that RFP for the single hauler, as it's written now, and it will still contain this when it goes out, there are options for haulers to bid on providing those services. So obviously we can't guarantee that they will bid on those services, but we are asking them to bid on those services if they want to. So essentially in January, February, we will know more about whether anyone is willing to bid on those services.
And how, if they don't bid on them, how do you perceive the community finding that opportunity to send their yard waste separately?
I'm gonna butt in.
Yeah,
So
but
what we talked about is if nobody bids on those services, one's curbside, one is the weekend kind of conversation that we had. If nobody bids on those or they're unreasonable bids because they're just doing it because we asked them to kind of things, then we'll pull at least the weekend one out and bid that individually because there are more haulers that might be interested in that than versus the entire scope. So it'll make it a little bit easier. But if we get a good bid that some of these haulers want to do that curbside or the weekend things, great, spectacular. We could do it all under one contract. If not, we'll yank it out and do another RFP to at least do that summer service like Carbondale does, because it seems to be pretty effective there and it gets a lot of that yard waste out of that stream quickly. Just like our leaf recycling does the Christmas trees, when we have a massive storm, we do the branch collection and let them kind of bring them out there, those kinds of things. So yeah, definitely will still happen one way or the other.
And my other question on that, and it's to all of these bans. So people throw things in the trash. They don't even think about it sometimes. How do you perceive that ban of, hey, I picked a couple of weeds out of my yard and threw them in the trash can, didn't even think about it. And that's a really simple kind of thing, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, whether it's food or weeds or.
Yeah, so it's definitely kind of a complex question. And because we're looking at with our bans, because we're the owner of the landfill, but the landfill is not within our actual jurisdiction, so it's not within the city limits. Our point of enforcement is the landfill. So it is the truck that's tipping there. So these bans would actually put pressure on every hauler. The big haulers, the little haulers, the individual people, the people with dump trailers. It would put pressure on those people to be paying attention to what's going into their trucks. And they would be responsible for doing the education to make sure they're not bringing these materials to the landfill.
So I got a couple of questions. Go ahead.
We would not implement a ban without doing a large education service to make people understand if you're happy your trash can is weeds because that's what you pulled out, they may not pick it up. They may just say that's too much. They may yellow tag it like we have as our pay as their throw option. They may just send you, a lot of these people actually have the ability to send you an email as they're sitting at your curb. They've taken a photo of it, haven't even got out of the truck, and send you an email, say you have too much contaminant, the landfill is banning this is where it's going to go. We're leaving it until next week. Please remove that. But just as we do on everything, we do the best we can on everything, there'd be a public education associated with that, hey, they may not pick it up. If they do pick it up, they may charge you more because at the other end, we're going to charge them for it. So if we see a lot coming out, and we'll set a percentage, 10%, 5%, whatever of the truck. If it's more than that, perceived more than that, then we'll charge them additionally on when they come back and finish the tipping fee at the bottom. And they'll have to pass that back on to the customers, and they'll want to know who those customers are so they can pass it back on to them. So it'll be a little bit of a process, which is why Liz kind of brought up, it takes a year or two kind of to get it right. But once you get it right, just like e-waste, we all know, bring it, recycle it, you have to pay for it. It's a standard operating procedure nowadays. So once you kind of get people used to it, I think it's going to kind of go away. Especially if we can provide that weekend service. Okay, they've got that third can already. They're just going to run it over on the weekend, dump it, and be done with it. And it saves them having to upsize their cans with this pay as you throw if they're utilizing other services. So
I will, if I can just add a little bit there. Each material is a little different in terms of what we're seeing right now. But for example, the yard waste, we're not actually seeing a lot of yard waste in the municipal solid waste compactor trucks. So like people putting a little yard waste into their household trash is not the biggest thing with that. Really the biggest violators of that we would be changing their behavior with this yard waste ban is actually the landscapers and the property management companies right now, who pretty frequently they're coming to the landfill with like a trailer that's half brush and half trash. And they simply don't have an incentive to not throw the brush into the trash. So they're already there. They have a dump trailer and they can pretty easily do it. They just need that extra push to do it. Yeah.
So my first question is you have these four things of your yard waste, metal, cardboard, food waste. Are those the four things that you're recommending we proceed with right now?
Well, in a certain order. So I would say yard waste we can do absolutely right now, very quickly. Metal and cardboard, I think we can also do within the next 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
What I say right now, I mean, kind of the immediate.
Okay, yeah, you mean
Okay.
like.
And food waste is longer is what I understand.
Food waste, I would love to do right now. I mean, because as you can see, it's 6,000 tons per year. It's a big chunk.
Would we be able to absorb that into our current composting system,
Yeah, absolutely, we can.
the 6,000?
We can absorb that into our current composting system. And I will just give a little shout out to the DDA who's already left, but the DDA partnered with us and wrote a letter of support for our recent grant application we put into the USDA to expand our compost system. So,
Good.
yeah.
The other issue, and it's been raised before, and I was reviewing the climate action plan, and this was discussed back in 2007, and that's construction waste. And I know it's come up before by a
Yeah.
couple of citizens who have brought it up, and I think you're on that group as well. And we had this discussion. I understand that Pickens County requires by a building permit some kind of limitation.
Mhm.
If we could do that within the city, we wouldn't be able to do it in the county. Is it something that we should be doing? I know we have the higher rates by if it's mixed versus non-mixed and things like that. Is there something we could do to say that you have to get a permit for your deconstructed building? We have the potential of a couple large buildings that are gonna be deconstructed from what I understand, maybe long-term plans. And I hate to see all this stuff go to landfill. That would be a huge influx in our landfill. Those buildings are taken down and not
Mhm.
deconstructed. So is there a way to do that now? Is that something you think we should be? I don't, again, not tomorrow, but I mean, the next 6 months, should we be looking at some kind of a permitting or otherwise to handle that situation?
I would say, I mean, absolutely. We have a lot of choices. There are a lot of different ways of how you can approach that problem. So for example, a landfill ban on concrete would be a pretty effective way to approach that kind of issue.
A banner segregated.
So a ban simply means that they can't dump it into the trash part of the landfill.
right.
It means they can bring it to the landfill as long as they put it into our recycling.
You got the dirty to clean concrete places and.
Right,
stuff.
exactly, where it gets recycled into aggregate. So landfill bans on the materials that you anticipate being the largest materials from those demolitions, that can be an effective way to regulate it at the landfill level. I mean, the community development department could look at requiring deconstruction rather than demolition. I mean, that would be more a question for them.
Okay.
That's how Pickens County handles it, is that part of the building permits, you have to have so many efficiency
Right.
points. As you deconstruct it, you get efficiency points and you're gonna bring it certain places. So they don't really ban it. It's kind of handled at the permit level.
Right.
Of, you have to do this and we are going to check that you do this. So that we know that it's going to the landfill in an appropriate manner. It takes a little bit of the load off the landfill staff of trying to figure out where everything's gonna go, where did it come from? That was part of the conversation a little bit last time we talked about deconstruction was, what if it's coming from Carbondale? They don't have to deconstruct it. They're just gonna pay the mixed use
Mhm.
version of it because they're gonna haul it to us like they did last year. We had this conversation about one of the buildings down. So
Yeah.
maybe a landfill ban on certain things would be more global. And help people along the way to deconstruct something so that they're not paying. I guess if we ban it, they'd have to do it one way or the
Yeah.
other, or we could just keep raising rates.
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
Pickens County did too.
yeah, I mean, a simple option as well is that, you know, that unsorted construction waste rate, we can raise that.
Yeah.
Just to create more of an incentive.
But we also like to end it. This, I guess, is my good. Is this
Yeah.
comment as well or just questions?
Yeah, next stuff.
So my comment is I'd like to see within staff time, something developed that we might be able to implement before the construction season starts out next spring. About construction. So I'd like to see us, something presented to us so we can look at that as I think we need to get at that sooner rather than later. Thank you.
I'd be supportive of that as well.
And I think most of my questions were answered by other ones here. The only comment I had is that I really would appreciate making it as easy as possible for our public, whether if we end up with single hauler or wherever we're going to end up. Whether it's picked up at the curb or if we have some drop-off locations around town that make it convenient so everybody doesn't have to drive out to South Campus. But I like the direction, so thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
Ingrid?
Well, I didn't have any more questions. I think I'm all set. I think everything got answered just as a little request. And I think I made this last time we met about and talked about this, is that if we do single hauler, it's this great opportunity to re-educate and implement some new changes. So just keeping that on the forefront.
All right, this is on the agenda just as a discussion, but I see two people that are here. Ray, do you have anything to say about this? I just didn't know why you're here. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Gotcha. If there's no public comment either, then thank you. It was a great presentation.
So should I?
Charlie, I agree with what you said about that.
We'll work on the yard waste version of a ban with the ordinance with Carl, and we'll bring it back to you.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you both.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, council comments. Paula?
I have noticed some news articles and information about these e-bikes, that there's a rebate available at a state level, and it's not always accessible, but I have brought it to Steve Boyd's attention, and he has asked staff to look into it, but I wanted to make it just bring it to the council to see what you guys thought about having that kind of program in Glenwood Springs, and how we might be able to push that forward, which basically gives a rebate for somebody's purchasing an e-bike, which many people are accessing now. And I think that would help us with our transportation issues here in town. And it's great for the environment, and it goes with our climate part of our discussions earlier today. So it's just something that I would like to look at when you have time, when the staff has time, for possibly bringing as a Glenwood program.
And I would say, so I think the program you're referring to is Denver's though, correct? Is there a statewide pile of money or?
Yeah.
So the thing about Denver is that they have a dedicated, like 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax for that program. It generates hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, maybe not hundreds,
Yeah.
tens of millions for sure. I'm super supportive of it regardless of that, but I also think that RAFTA has an infrastructure with WeCycle. And I think that would make, they have a mini grant application.
Mhm.
So, them being the kind of nonprofit e-bike kind of experts. We can take that, Shelley and I can take that back to RAFTA and see if they can take that on. So
That'd be great.
maybe it doesn't have to be our staff.
Yeah, no, that would be great if there's that opportunity.
Cool.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have one
Wait, I
thing.
had a quick question about that. Would that be like, Paula, similar to what we do with like refrigerators, stuff like that? Maybe you could make it part of that. Like, I know, like,
Where they get a
Energy efficient-
rebate from town
Yes.
for, yeah,
yeah,
that's what I was thinking initially, is that it
Yeah.
would be along that line, but
Yeah.
if there's another opportunity.
for dish.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The thing I'll bring up, and I had emailed Ryan, Carl, and Steve this, but I'd like for the first meeting in December to have our first reading on a 20% inclusionary zoning, and also the downtown retail restaurant overlay. I think we talked about this a while ago. It got put to the back burner. I felt like we were kind of on the 5-yard line with both of those conversations. I understand that the inclusionary zoning has to go through, both of them do. Okay, so it seems like they might be a decent sized meeting for planning and zoning in November.
You do realize that it's November.
But when I sent that email 2 weeks ago, it wasn't.
You are the mayor.
No, I'm saying for it to come back before council for action. And maybe my recollection is incorrect. But I felt like when we had that work session on the overlay district for downtown, that we were kind of nitpicking and kind of like massaging borders and, should it extend here, should it not? But felt like we were very, very close to making a decision at that time, and that was a while ago. And I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I was reminded we didn't actually have a scheduled November meeting because we didn't have anything else on. So, why don't we, I mean, in all seriousness, I think what I would tag is, let us get something on in December with the planning commission and on the first meeting in January rather than the first meeting in December. I mean, I also have to recognize that it's the holidays. So we lose a week-ish at both Christmas and Thanksgiving. I mean, you try to work through it. I do, but I'm crazy. So I mean, pragmatically, it's not gonna happen by the first week in December.
That's fine. The first week of January is fine.
And does that also work for Hannah's schedule as well?
I was just going to mention on the downtown retail standards, the place where we left off was council wanting to have a open house public engagement session with council and the public. That was what staff came away with that. So that's what we were planning to try and organize for January.
Sorry, when?
In January is where we left that off at the last work session. That was requested by you guys. If that has changed and you don't
No,
want that to occur.
I think my sense of urgency is just that we've talked about it for a long time and every time, you know, a new bank goes downtown or something gets redeveloped into a use that makes downtown, you know, while we're on, you know, Mr. Henny, while we're on the downtown vitality and engagement that, you know, waiting 2 more months to have the meeting and then waiting another month for P and Z to talk about it. By March, there might be 2 more plans of things that make downtown less vital. So for me, there is an urgency to it that I don't, you know, it's been 6 months. And I know we've had a lot of change and I hate throwing stuff on. I just think that these things are urgent. So that's my personal sense. That's why I said December, you know, I just threw it out there. But so if we still want to have that community meeting, that's fine. I don't know. I'm open to comments or suggestions about that.
I'd say let staff roll with it.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with Martha.
So when do we want to set a time for that to be for us to consider?
What's reasonable? I guess that's what I'd ask. Carl, give Carl your
I would
comments.
say not before January.
Okay.
January for planning commission or January for council?
Well, both of them can go to council at this point, I believe. The downtown development standards went to P and Z twice.
Oh,
And then
that's
we
true.
came with a recommendation and then the public engagement meeting was requested. So that's what we've been waiting to schedule.
Okay.
And the other one is inclusionary zoning.
So-
That one might need to go to P and Z.
Yeah, but that would be a shorter one because it's one change that we can probably make in December. So January.
I guess the question is, do we need to have the meeting before we move, at least on first reading, for the downtown overlay?
I think it'd be good to have public input. That's part of that trust building.
I think it would be good to have a draft of, you know, a tighter draft of where we're at. It depends on how willing you are to change after first reading, if you wanted to consider it on the first reading, or if you want to see it on first reading beginning of January and continue it to have that public hearing might be the other way, so we can get a little input from you guys.
What would you think about this, about having the first reading in January, but then the second reading, the first meeting of February, but having the public meeting in between? That way the public gets to see, here's kind of about where we're at.
Right, that's
And
what I was saying.
yeah. Yeah, but I said it better.
Jonathan,
But there's something for the public to consider. Thank you for saying that.
Yep. My only concern with us passing them in first reading, I understand what you're saying, is without, before the public hearings, the public said we've already decided. And that's kind of some of the hint we've already taken is we're deciding things before we take public.
Yeah.
input. But I think what a lot of us have a viewpoint on what should happen. I think just from perception standpoint, I'd rather have the public meeting first, and it causes us to go into the first. If we get that meeting the first part of the month of January, we can put first reading in our meeting in January 19th. And we can do second reading in February 1st. So we're still getting the same thing.
And I'm fine with that. I think the idea was, though, to give something to the public of, here's what we're thinking. We'll still have on first reading, public comment. We'll have public meeting. And I'll take public comment on
Well,
second.
and actually, can I suggest kind of a hybrid of all of this is let's do kind of an informational discussion at night. So it's recorded. What would normally be effectively a first reading, but now don't actually schedule it as a first reading. We'll just do a presentation on it. Then we can schedule the public meeting and then do a first reading, second reading. That way there is no action by you guys. It's only discussion. And I think it addresses the getting ahead of the whatever that thing is about the cart and the horse with the public.
Putting the horse before
Thank you. Cart before the horse. I think in that way, but I do think it's important to have something for the public to react to.
I agree with that.
Okay.
And I'll just put a plea in, if we could push inclusionary zoning to February, I would be grateful, but I understand if you won't allow me that extra time.
Let's push inclusionary housing to
Yeah.
February.
Great.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
Hannah, why don't you see what you can do? And if it's really unrealistic, I think all of us understand that, but I think we're anxious to get something moving as well.
And staff is as well, and we're actively working with a consultant on a grant project. And so I think the timeline with the grant project will match up better with maybe some more information that I can give you in February as opposed to January.
And I know we're talking about the comp plan soon, and we have city manager to be selected and other things, so
Just a few things going on.
just a couple.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks.
Thanks. Any other comments? All right, staff reports.
I'm gonna be Steve. No, just gonna do mine real quick because Steve has a lengthy one that he wanted, I don't know, 40 minutes or something. So
I see what you're doing.
just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the search. As of the end of last week, we had 22 to 25, I think, somewhere in there, applicants. What they told me is that the majority of those, I think, close to 20 or more, meet or exceed what you guys had laid out as your minimums in the job posting. So we have about a week left, and we usually see a bump at the end of the cycle, of course. And I do think, the anecdotal evidence that Jonathan brought, that some of the changes you guys chose to make in that job posting have been, generated some interest, at least in the Intermountain area, regarding the position. So hopefully we'll come back in a week with a good slate for you guys to take a look at. And now Steve's got, I don't know, he said some PowerPoint, something, I don't know.
Bye, Steve.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay, just real quick, this won't take long, but as you guys may realize or may not, I don't know, when you put together a masterpiece budget like we did, that's worthy of unanimous approval, it's not just a couple people in finance, right? I mean, it takes a village. That village is here and other employees and stuff. And there's a place upstairs, affectionately known as the bunker. The bunker is a place where a lot of budgetary, discussions get done, and everybody knows not to bother the people in the bunker when they're talking about the budget. The problem with the bunker is it's not really very big. So we have lots of times where we have to have, a lot of people in the room. So we go to conference rooms, and we go stand in circles outside the parking lot, wherever we can go. We try to not be found too much because, everybody is in this place. Athletes kind of refer to it sometimes as the zone, right? And once you get out of the zone, it's hard to get back into the zone. So we try to be quiet and not like slam doors and make too much noise and that kind of stuff. The tradition has become that every year, 2 to 4 people do really amazing, incredible things in the budget process. So we have these budget awards, and I have one here tonight. It's orange because if you've been upstairs to my office and seen the orange wall and know the story, you know that the color of money in Glenwood Springs is orange. So it's an orange budget award. So I'm pleased to present the 2023 budget award to the person most likely to give our budgetary position away in the event someone says something funny, to Jen Uten. I think this is actually Jen's last meeting, so I'm gonna leave her up here holding this. So if anybody wants to make fun of her.
No. Jen. No. No, you. No. You have to. You have to come up. I have to give a proclamation. Oh, you're. Okay.
Max will be angry.
Okay. Okay.
I like those.
This one,
Yeah.
little tiny one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, move. Whereas Ms. Hooten began her career as city assistant, I talked to my hand, I'm sorry, director of economic and community development. And although Ms. Hooten is currently performing several duties. Her official titles are Director of Community and Economic Development and Assistant City Manager. And whereas Ms. Uten has been vital in the move towards housing equity, and whereas Ms. Uten's intelligence, integrity, knowledge, humor, and heartwarming chipmunk laugh are only a few of the reasons she's absolutely beloved by her staff. And whereas no city manager, chief of police, city attorney should even think that they're going to get another proclamation if they leave. We're done with these. There's no more incentive for leaving. Whereas Ms. Uten was named Assistant City Manager of the Year for Colorado from the Colorado City and County Manager Association in 2021 and elected President of the CCMA in 2022. And whereas maybe a senior staff dressed a little more professionally, Ms. Uten would have stayed. And whereas Ms. Uten has been tirelessly dedicated to her staff, her fellow employees, for many, many positions, the city council, and most importantly, what benefits her community. Therefore, be resolved, I, Jonathan Godes, Mayor of Glenwood Springs, the state of Colorado, by here do recognize and express our deepest gratitude to Assistant City Manager and Director of Economic Development and Community Development, Jen Uten, for her crucial contributions to our city, both internal and external. Really, no more of those. All right, anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Now we're on our left.
I know. Carl.